Does aesthetic world building come into conflict? Does aesthetic world building come into conflict? Jesus Christ. I can't say conflict. Let me do that again.
But you said I can't say conflict, and then you said it right that time.
Oh, I did, didn't I? Maybe I just got like red light syndrome. I can't say it when I know I'm officially in the recording, you know? Anyhow, so conflict. No, does aesthetic world building come into conflict? In light of the last episode, Bill, and our discussion about The Martian, I went off and listened to The Martian.
Okay.
And not only did I listen to it, Bill, I also watched the film.
Okay.
And I have thoughts.
Please share them.
So, first thought is, the book's okay.
Yeah.
At least from an audiobook standpoint. Like you said, I thought it was solid. It wasn't anything to, write home about, but it was okay. The maths really bugged me. I anticipated that, and it really bugged me. There really was a lot of it.
Yep.
Like, so much. And I found myself way more interested in the political side of things and the interaction between humans. Like, the best bit of the book, I thought, was when, spoiler alert here, guys, actually, was when the Chinese stepped in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, like, their political motivations for doing so. They don't really care about Mark, per se. They were kind of like, we can advance China on the world stage if we, come to the rescue of the Americans.
Yeah.
That stuff I thought was great.
And the internal politics of NASA. Exactly. I thought that stuff was awesome. And even Mark surviving on a human level was great. But there was just so many calculations. And it was really hard to stay focused on them because I was like, I lost interest really quickly. So that was my thoughts on it. And then I after I finished listening to the book, because I listened to it on audiobook, I sat back and thought about it for a second, and I struggled to come to terms with why I didn't like all the maths, because I like Star Trek. And Star Trek, although we'd point this out in the last episode, but it has technobabble. And we know its technobabble isn't grounded in rigor the way the Martian stuff is. But it's still technical speak and lots of it. Yeah.
So I found I was conflicted. I was like, I really like Star Trek, and I don't find all the kind of speculative engineering in it a problem, but I found the stuff in The Martian a problem. And I think for me it was just an issue of volume. Like, a Star Trek episode is 45 minutes, and maybe say 5 of those minutes, maybe 10 at a push, is technical stuff. And then that's it, If even, exactly. So you're not exposed to as much of it. And even if you watch episodes, like a string of episodes in a row, there's that mental break between episodes, you're starting anew. Whereas with The Martian, it was a 10-hour audiobook, right? And there was a lot of maths to do in 10 hours. And I did it in almost one sitting in a sleepless night.
Oh, God.
So it was hardcore, and, so it was all right. I recommend the book. I still have a problem with the maths.
That's fair enough.
And then, so the movie, right? Have you seen the movie?
I haven't.
Are you going to see the movie?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. So I thought the movie might be better than the book. I thought it would make more sense as a movie. And in many ways it did. For one, they got rid of 90% of the maths. Because there's no way a mainstream audience would be able to deal with all that. And they pay homage to it with a fairly mathsy scene at the start, and then it kind of dwindles as it goes out. But the movie, right? The movie was almost 2.5 hours long. Okay? So it's a long movie. But it didn't seem long at all, which usually is a good thing. But for me, it was kind of like, Mark was trapped there for 20 days. Not so bad. Just came home on the next spaceship that flew by, And I didn't feel like Mark Watney was really he was there for how long was there for a year and a half, something like that.
Something like that, I think. Yeah.
Did not come across like that in the movie, and they delayed visual cues say beards growing for ages, and I feel like they should have had that as a thing from the start. His beard should have progressively gotten bigger and bushier throughout, so you could really feel the time passing, and it just that didn't happen. They also made the movie way more hilarious.
Oh, really?
It's I would say it's borderline comedy.
like the people in the cinema they were loving it. Like there was laughs, there was giggles. It was great old crack. And that,
like his cracks and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And the way they play off the interactions, like in NASA even, the sort of like backhanded sort of things. And yeah, it just all came across being very, very funny. Much more so than the book. But, and the last thing, and then I'll stop talking about The Martian. Remember I said about the Chinese and how that's the best bit of the book?
Yeah.
They totally cut that.
What?
They completely cut, like they're there obviously, but they go, let's help the Americans. And then they go, okay. But there's none of the like the wheeling and dealing and the sort of like power struggle on the world stage. And I was like, oh guys, no, what have you done? Oh, so they got rid of the maths, but they also got rid of the really good bit. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah, that sounds like a shame.
But overall, it was a fun movie. I said because there was a few of us in the cinema, I said to the people I was with, I was like, it was a solid movie for a solid book, but nothing I'd go watch again.
Yeah, I could see that being a likely outcome.
Yeah.
Like, the thing about it is that, about the book, is that, like, Andy Weir is an engineer or something. Like, he's a person from a technical background. He's not a writer. So the prose isn't fantastic. It's good. It does the job. But, you know, he isn't really trained in how to make things funny and stuff. So, and I think you can tell that. So it's not really that surprising to me that the film would be funnier. Yeah,
definitely. I think a lot of visual cues as well help, you know?
Yeah.
I think as well, Bill, the thing with Andy Weir is I think it'd be interesting to see what he does as a second book.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have a sneaky suspicion that The Martian wouldn't have done so well if it wasn't released around now. Like, because Mars is very much in the news and has been for the past, maybe a year or two, perhaps?
Okay.
I think that's helped the book immensely. And it'd be interesting to see what happens with his second book.
I think he's working on kind of a sort of a space opera kind of thing.
Is he?
I think so.
Oh, because I was about to say again, if he goes down the route of the like technical engineering fiction, I don't think it'll fly. Mm-hmm. I think this was kind of, it caught people off guard in a way. And like, example, the captain, for example, she read it because she heard of this unique way of writing a book. i.e. the speculative engineering. But if that happens again, I don't know if it's going to fly so much.
Yeah, it won't be that as interesting the second time around.
Exactly. So it'd be interesting. I'm going to keep an eye out to see what he comes up with next. So all round, film and book, I'd give it a solid maybe 6.5 out of 10, maybe 7. Okay. Let's be generous, 7.
Cool.
All right. Okay. So that is point number 1. Point number 2, Bill. I have finished Voyager.
Oh, really?
I have. Okay, now, before I start talking about Star Trek, right? Because no one has left any comments in the subreddit saying, stop talking about Star Trek, I'm going to take that as everyone wants to hear lots about Star Trek, all right? So we're going to double down on the Star Trek, and if people don't like it, leave a comment, and then we'll see what happens. But anyhow, I finished Voyager. Mm-hmm. And Voyager, again, has me really conflicted now. And I'm like, I fairly quickly got The Martian into a box and was able to like get in my head where I thought it sat in the grander scheme of things. I can't do that with Voyager. It's a real troublesome series. You see, depending on your outlook, it's either the best Star Trek there is,
right,
or just the bottom of the barrel worst nonsense ever.
Okay.
And it all depends on where you come from. Like, if you're into Star Trek for the, boldly go where no man has gone before sort of thing, mm-hmm. and seeing a new set of aliens every week and things like that, then it's by far the best. It does a better job than the original series because they're literally going where no man has gone before. Yeah. And you get that sense of exploration. But if you're into Star Trek for social commentary, which I think is why people are into Star Trek, Voyager failed miserably at that. Like, it tries every so often, and there's a few standout episodes that are kind of good social commentary, but like doesn't come anywhere close to, say, The Next Generation. Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's why most people are into it, rather than seeing cool aliens?
I think so, yeah. Just from reading around the internet, it was always kind of like, Star Trek does this issue. Star Trek does, like, the National Health Service. And I think people are interested in seeing that.
Cameron's Federation.
Cameron's Federation?
Like David Cameron. Politics jokes. Right here on the Artifexian podcast.
For all of our US listeners who may not even know who David Cameron is, actually no, they would. He went viral with his with the pig thing recently.
With Piggate, yeah.
Piggate, yeah.
That is one thing I absolutely loathe, Edgar.
Okay.
Is affixing gate as a suffix to every political scandal.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now, is that because it's unimaginative, or it undermines the original use of the word gate in a political scandal?
Just unimaginative.
Yeah. Do you know what I like about it?
What?
Outside of the political realm, I think it's funny when it's attached to like non-political things, like Ben Gate with the iPhones. I thought that was great because it's like it like gives this air of kind of like, oh my god, this is really serious. There's something that's not really that serious at all, you know.
There's a rather good Mitchell and Webb?
I know of them, but I haven't watched any of their stuff.
There's a rather good Mitchell and Webb sketch based on this, where one of them is convinced that the original scandal is the Watergate gate. Because he used gate as a suffix, and the scandal happened in the Watergate Hotel. Because if it was just the Watergate scandal, then it would be something to do with water.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. I'll see if I can find a YouTube link to it and can throw it in the show notes.
I wonder, has Gate, like, has it lost its connection to the original thing? Because, I mean, like, lots of people alive today, like me included, weren't around when Watergate happened. So I'm assuming for a good, like, swab of people, Gate purely exists as a suffix.
Possibly, yeah.
I'm not sure how I feel about that.
An annoying one.
Yeah, I think so. I think without the connection to the original event, I think it loses all appeal. If it's just like a suffix, that's a bit, you know. But anyhow, politics on the Artifexian podcast. Jesus. So yeah, it's either great or complete nonsense. I can't tell. For the early seasons, it was awful, just downright awful. Until 7 of 9 steps in and drags the show back on course. It was not great at all. From season 4 onwards, it gets better. And like, there's moments of pure golden sci-fi writing in it. Like, did you ever hear of an episode called Blink of an Eye?
Not sure.
Okay, it's quite a famous one. It's spoilers, mild spoilers here again. It's where they're in orbit around a donut planet.
Okay.
And the donut planet is out of temporal phase with the rest of the universe.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and so that means...
I think I remember seeing this.
Yeah, so that means that time goes faster. Time is faster on the planet than it is on Voyager.
Yeah.
So for every 1 minute on Voyager, it's like 10 years on the planet. And it is a beautiful study into culture and interfering with other cultures. And like, there's like a space race, and it's just great. It's like, they should have made a movie out of just that episode. I was blown away, right? But then on the other hand, you have an episode like Threshold. And do you know Threshold?
I don't remember Threshold.
Threshold is where Janeway and Paris turn into like these lizard things and make lizard babies, and then they populate a planet with their offspring. And it's so incredibly awful. Like, I've never seen worse television. It's awful.
No.
You Google it, man. It's so bad.
Wow. Yeah. That's
So those 2 episodes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? Those 2 episodes perfectly sum up Voyager. It goes from sublime to absolute trash. And it's a very hit and miss Star Trek. But it's lots of fun. It's really funny and quirky and camp. And if you're into that, that's cool, but it cannot and will not ever touch the likes of The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine. It's like Star Trek Light. That's what it's like.
Okay. Maybe I should rewatch some of it. My main issue with it was that it was the most blatant example of there just being like 4 plots.
Yeah, you were saying before, yeah.
I've said this on the podcast already. Like, there's essentially like 3 or 4 actual plots for a Star Trek Voyager episode,
and they just recycle them over and over again.
Yeah, pretty much. And it really annoys me because I never particularly liked Janeway as a character.
Oh, controversial.
Yeah. No, I just never. But I really like that actor. I really like Kate Mulgrew.
Okay, all right. What is it about Janeway that you didn't like?
And hold on, what is it about Janeway you didn't like, and that you like about Mulgrew? I don't get.
I don't know. She just never really spoke to me in any way. She was never that kind of interesting or compelling a character. Now, bear in mind, I was watching this when it was originally broadcast and shortly afterwards, so I might...
That's mid-90s, is it?
Oh, no, early thousands.
Is it early thousands? No.
Early thousands, yeah.
No,
well,
really?
It finished in the early thousands. I don't know when it started. I think maybe it started in the mid-90s.
Oh, wow.
But let's check. I have Wikipedia open.
Sure, Bill can Google. Let's do it.
1995 to 2001. So maybe I was watching it a little bit afterwards. I was watching it like about 12 years ago, let's say.
So little Bill maybe didn't appreciate the nuances that older Bill may have done when it came to Janeway. Possibly,
yeah. Like, I might kind of reevaluate or were to watch it now. But I really like Kate Mulgrew because she's in Orange is the New Black, and she's the best character in Orange is the New Black.
Oh, is she? I've never seen Orange is the New Black because, sci-fi. Yeah, I never heard anyone speak about her. All I've heard about Orange is the New Black is that actor that's coming in.
Ruby Rose.
Ruby Rose, yes.
Yeah.
That went massive on the internet for some. I don't know what it was about. I don't get that show. I don't know what's. It's about jail. And it's okay.
Yeah, and the first two seasons are really good. I don't really like the third season much, but the first two are very, very good.
Does Mulgrew play some sort of... is she a Russian inmate, I seem to think?
Yeah.
Okay.
She plays this kind of older Russian woman who's like total badass.
But Janeway was...
I love her.
And I love her. Janeway was a badass as well.
I guess. I don't know. I don't remember it as that, and it didn't really come across that way to me at the time.
Just to elaborate a little bit on the Janeway situation here, right? I think she's a great captain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Mulgrew played her really well. But I think the thing that undermines her as a captain are the writers. They couldn't sort out what her role was early on. And it's very kind of up and down. And there's a lot of character changes. Like, she goes from being like a stern leader, to being like a real comforting mum. And I get that people can do that, but it was like the character did a 180 flip.
Right.
On a regular basis, and it was very jarring. And
so she didn't have a consistent thread, kind of?
She did, well, not until they locked it down and figured out what they're going to do after a couple of seasons.
Mm-hmm.
But, and Mulgrew, I think, has said in the past that the only way she could deal with it, and I think this speaks volumes to her as an actor, the only way she dealt with it was to play it as if Janeway had shell shock, right?
Right.
So that sort of like mixture of confusing emotions and like not having the stability in her character, and she used that as a platform to be able to like pull off Janeway. And the fact that she pulled off Janeway amidst all the confusion in the writing, I think is testament to how good of an actor she is.
Fair enough. What does she have shell shock from?
No, she doesn't have shell shock from anything. Janeway just took that, Mulgrew took that as her inspiration.
Oh, okay.
And she used that as a kind of way to like get past the writer's craziness, She was like, okay, if I just play it with shell shock, all this should make some sort of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she's a great captain. I still think she's not as good as Picard. No one's going to be as good as Picard. She is better than Sisko, I feel. And the only reason she's better than Sisko is that the actor whose name escapes me, who played Sisko, is not a good actor, I don't think.
Oh, fair enough.
He is prone to bouts of serious overacting sometimes. And I think Janeway is overall a better actor. So all three
Avery Brooks.
That's it, yes. All three are great captains, and I think for me it would go Picard, Janeway, Sisko, Kirk, and I need to find out how I'm going to fit Archer into all these things.
So you have to watch Enterprise next?
I've started Enterprise.
Oh, have you?
I have. Okay, can I keep going?
Yeah.
Well, sure, we'll cut this if it gets too long, right? Okay, so Enterprise, right? I've only watched like 5 episodes, so immediate thoughts on Enterprise, and they're liable to change, so don't hold me to this, internet. The theme song is ridiculous.
It's terrible, isn't it?
What were they thinking, like? And I heard people say, oh, they're singing before, right? And I assumed this was singing as in, like, the original series singing, somebody warbling. But it's... Exactly, something like that, right?
but it's a pop song, like, or not. It's not even a pop song. It's like a.
It's kind of a country folk song.
A country folk song. And I'm like, what is this? And then juxtaposed with the images of space. It's like, oh God, what were you thinking, people?
Which works for Firefly.
Do they have a pop song? I can't remember. Again, I only watched a couple of episodes when I briefly tried to make a true Firefly, but then Star Trek came again. And I couldn't.
Yeah, it's got kind of like a country-ish kind of song.
Huh. Well, it doesn't work in Enterprise. Not at all. Not even slightly. So the overall aesthetics, because I haven't got a chance to know any of the crew really, so I'm not going to comment on characters. The overall aesthetics are very good. And I think they are a lot more real than the likes of The Next Generation and Voyager, I suppose. Like, it feels like you're in a vessel in space, you know, not like a luxury cruise liner.
Okay.
Which always bugged me. Like, I always hated the inside of the Enterprise in The Next Generation with their, like, you know, plush carpets everywhere. You're like, well, I get it. I get why this can be a thing. But I'm like, just make it look more like a scientific vessel. Do you know what I mean? And I think Enterprise does that really well. It looks like a kind of a real spaceship. It's pretty cool. The cast overall, they all look the same. They all look like the same person, barring obviously T'Pol, who's Vulcan and clearly looks different. But I still get confused between the characters. Like, wait, now who is this now? Because they're all like kind of like good looking. Well, for the most part, okay, they're all like good looking, kind of beefy Caucasian males in a certain age bracket, and it's like, I don't know who you are. You could be any one of 5 characters here, you know.
On that point, I recently went to see the new Macbeth film.
I didn't realize there was a Macbeth film.
Yeah, one has just come out recently, and it stars Michael Fassbender as Macbeth.
Oh, I heard about this. I heard that the internet was saying he was the perfect person to play Macbeth. Is that the case?
Well, I had a similar problem with Macbeth as you are having with Star Trek Enterprise, because every single character in it, apart from Lady Macbeth and the witches, everyone that you see more than a handful of times is a middle-aged white man with a beard and a sort of haggard expression and a dirty face and a Scottish accent. It's impossible to tell who's who. And also, it's really visually muddy, the film, I found. It was really kind of... It wasn't very kind of crisply shot, so it could be kind of hard to tell like who you're actually looking at times. And it was just like, I studied Macbeth for my Leaving Cert, so I know it roughly. But even with that, I was kind of having difficulty remembering, like, is that Macduff or is that Malcolm or what's going on?
Like, is it so hard to just cast actors that look very different from one another?
Well, I mean, the other guys don't look like Michael Fassbender, but when they all have dirty faces and haggard expressions and beards.
Yeah, and the same thing goes for Enterprise. If they're all in the same costume. It's like... Oh, the costume, right? Finally, a uniform, a Starfleet uniform that actually makes sense. Like, brilliant. Like, for so long, I've been really at odds with the uniform because it's like, well, one, it looks like pajamas. I don't like that. Just choose not to make it look like pajamas. And two, they have no pockets. There are no pockets on like, for many, many centuries. No human has worn pockets on a spaceship like it. It's ridiculous. And in the Enterprise, at least they have zips, and it looks like a bit like a jumpsuit, which is kind of cool. And again, I get why there are no pockets, because they've gotten past the point of needing these things and they value aesthetics over practicality. But finally, with Enterprise, I'm like, yes, this looks like you're in space and you're going exploring. I think this is going to be good. But then I read the reviews and it's like, Enterprise, the worst thing ever. I was like, oh, great.
What I don't understand is why they made a prequel.
Oh, no, my thoughts are exactly the opposite. My thoughts are, why didn't they make a prequel sooner?
I know, it just seems like, because to keep it interesting, they have to add new aliens that we've never met in any of the other series. So, if you knew all these aliens, like, before the original series, how come no one has mentioned them for 300 years afterwards?
Yeah, okay, now, all right, fair point, right? But I think this goes again to why you watch Star Trek. And if you watch Star Trek for the new aliens every week, then I suppose Enterprise probably isn't going to be for you. But if you watch Star Trek for the commentary, then it doesn't make a difference.
I know, it's just an inconsistency that bothers me.
What?
From a world building point of view.
But why is that an inconsistency? I don't understand.
Like, okay, so I don't know what the new aliens that they have in Enterprise are. I've only, I watched a tiny bit of it. But let's say they're called the Cups.
The Cups, okay.
So if, they meet the glorious Cup Empire.
Yeah, do the Cups come from, Planet Cup?
Presumably.
And they have, the Cup Empire?
Presumably.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
And that gets folded into the Federation or whatever.
Right.
Then how come we've never seen a single Cup character in any of the other seasons? And, no one has ever mentioned them again. It breaks my immersion.
All right. When is the last time you have heard a news story that came from East Timor?
A news story?
Yeah, or when is the last time, say, East Timor cropped up on your radar? Could it just be that when the Cup Empire is folded into the Federation, they make up just an insignificant portion? Not saying that East Timor is insignificant or anything, but they make up just a small portion, and that they wouldn't play a big part on the global or the sort of the intergalactic scale.
Okay, to answer your question, does Timor in general count, or does it have to be specifically East Timor? Because I saw a reference to Timor the other day, and obviously that made me think of East Timor.
You are taking my analogy way too literally.
No, you asked a question, so I want to give you an honest answer.
All right.
2 days ago.
Okay. 2 days ago, right. But do you get my point?
Yeah, but then if, why are they worthy of a full storyline in Enterprise if they're, only a tiny thing?
But in Enterprise, they don't know that they might become an insignificant portion.
I don't know.
We don't know what countries. Well, we kind of can predict it, but we're not guaranteed what countries are going to be like leading superpowers in the next 700-800 years. If there are even countries, then we don't.
No,
know.
It's not that. It's not that.
Right. What is it?
It's just why have we never heard of them before? That's all of the aliens we've had in all of the other series, and then these are the people that are in the Federation. These are all the races, and then they go backwards and they retcon. And there's all these other races as well. It just puts me off.
I take your point, but I can brush it aside. I can logic it away, if you know what I mean. I think it's small price to pay for going back and hearing about the origins of the Federation. Because that strikes me as an interesting story. How humanity took its first steps into deep space, and then the relationship with the Vulcans, and it's not all rosy at the start and things like that. That's really cool things to be explored. And if it means you have to chuck in a few new aliens, then let's go for the greater good here.
I'd just like to see them go forward and have even cooler technology.
A question then, right? I think we talked in the podcast before about this, so I might cut this. I don't know. What would you like to see in another Star Trek? Because I think there's a limit to what you can go with Star Trek here. Because be what else do you do?
Maybe they cover this in some of the DS9 that I don't remember, but I'd like to see more of the Federation dealing with war. Okay.
I would say they certainly do cover it fairly well in DS9.
Okay.
But yeah, you could have another war one. But then you see, then the purists are going to be that's not Star Trek. Deep Space Nine isn't Star Trek. I think of...
Pretty sure it is.
No, you're doing the literal thing again. Deep Space Nine has nothing got to do with the ideals that Star Trek stands for, and has kind of stood for throughout its entire run. It's more akin to things like Battlestar Galactica than it is to a Star Trek thing. Yeah. I guess I'm not really that bothered about that purity of brand. I'd like to see a variety of things. Yeah, nor am I. That's a point that is to be considered, because some people be the Federation is all about exploring and encountering new races and making first contact, not going to war with people. Yeah. But I think it's hard to do a new Star Trek that's genuinely new. You can't do the Lost in Space thing.
with Voyager, you can't do just at a distance. Do you know what I mean? You've already had the just go exploring with the likes of the original series and Next Generation. And the proposal that was made for the next Star Trek was that you go to a new galaxy. But like effectively, that's the same thing.
Yeah, that's just a nominal change.
That's a nominal change. And it's hard to... I think it's hard to imagine what happens next. Or you could do the breakdown of the Federation.
Yeah.
Like post-apocalyptic Federation.
Yeah.
I suppose that's the only way you could go, you know? But anyhow. So, Voyager, out of 10, because we all know Bill loves his ranking out of 10, I would give Voyager... I think I'd give it another 7.
Okay.
It's fine. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. A lot of inconsistencies. An awful lot of crap. Some brilliance. 7 of 9 is awesome.
Was that out of 10 thing a reference to something that I've forgotten?
Yeah. The last time I asked you to sum up something out of 10, and you were like, "My feelings are too complex. I can't. I can't put a simple numerical value on my opinions." Blah 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 blah.
God, I am the worst.
And then remember, I went, "You don't have to put a simple numerical value." And then you went, "It's a 6i out of 10." You went all complex numbers on us. You're such a nerd, Bill.
This is how I roll.
So that is Star Trek, and that's The Martian, right?
Yeah.
Now, I have a follow-up question. This is all technically follow-up, by the way, listeners. I'm really sorry about this. A follow-up question from the last episode, okay? As I was editing it, I kept hearing you say things, and I didn't pick up on this during recording, but I kept hearing you say things like, that's a lot more aesthetic world building than rigorous world building, Edgar. It's not what I'd expect, right?
Okay.
And which is totally cool. But the overall sentiment I got when I edited the thing together was that this idea that aesthetic world building is not as good as rigorous world building. And I thought I'd put that to you again because I'd like you to clarify, and because I think it's an interesting question. Is aesthetic world building worse than rigorous world building?
No.
Okay. So then why? Or maybe this is just me, but I felt like it was framed. Your discussion was framed in like the use of aesthetic was a negative term. Is that true?
No.
Oh, I picked up not totally wrong. Okay, does aesthetic world building come into conflict with rigorous world building? Like, can one be rigorous and impose aesthetic constraints on top of the rigor? Like, my opinion is yes, and I felt like I was doing that. I felt like I was being overall quite rigorous and then just superimposing these aesthetic things to tie symbolism together. But does that detract from the rigor, in your opinion?
When I was saying I was surprised by it, and I wasn't expecting it to be more aesthetic, that wasn't a criticism of your world building. It was just a genuine expression of surprise. It was not what I expected you to do.
Okay, no, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
But outside of our discussion last week, say, is that the case though? Is it that aesthetic world building is in conflict with rigor?
I mean,
in a broader general sense.
I mean, if you're too wound up in rigor, you're not going to create anything new or interesting. You're only going to create like an actual world, a
perfect simulation of our universe.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have to make some kind of concessions or some kind of leaps at some stage, or else you're just going to have a carbon copy of how you see the world yourself. So in that sense, I would say that framing it as conflict is a bit difficult because it's necessary.
Okay, then, so can I just to elaborate even further, can I flip it around? Does rigorous world building make the aesthetic aspects better? Like, if you have a good underlay of rigor, does that mean if one puts aesthetic things on top, that kind of validates them?
I would say yes to that.
You would say yes to that, okay.
I would say yes to that, because, I mean, if you're just, like, pulling stuff out of thin air with no regard for its kind of internal consistency, and, I mean, I would consider internal consistency to be more important in terms of rigor than not necessarily replicating real-life facts.
Right, okay.
Obviously, I think you there's certain things that you are going to want to keep, like mammals breathe oxygen, things like that.
Whoa! Why obviously there?
Because that's a fundamental thing of how we work. I don't understand the question.
Okay, but like you know that book Worldbuilding that I keep banging on about?
Right.
The Writer's Guide to Constructing Fictional Star Systems?
Yeah.
The guy, I think, the guy who wrote it has some backing in chemistry. So he spends a lot of time talking about chemistry. Okay. And he proposes a scenario whereby, I assume, I'm no chemist, it's entirely plausible that mammal-like beings could evolve to breed chlorine.
Okay, so not mammals then.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you're saying like as in like humans essentially. If I
yeah.
Okay. Right. So if I make a sentient rat species, right, on a faraway planet and have them breed chlorine, you're not counting that as a mammal.
No, I mean
right. Okay.
like actual scientific things about the real world.
Right. Okay.
Like,
right.
You can't just ignore like combustion, for example. You can't just say, "Oh well, that doesn't work in this planet," that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, okay, fair point.
Or that doesn't work in this dimension or whatever.
I'd like to think you can get away with it in the dimension thing. If you change dimension, you can do anything, man.
Yeah, okay, but I'm borrowing off someone else's example here. That if you have like another realm and matches no longer work because that's too advanced technology, right? That was in some fiction or some fanfic or something that I came across online.
Huh.
By that logic, you can't breathe anymore. Because it's exactly the same chemical process.
Oh, that's, yeah.
This kind of thing.
I think, so a way of summing it up is you need to make sure that you include the things that make everything else function. If you disregard those things, the consequences are dire.
Yeah, and I think it's just, I would find that really silly to say that the exact same chemistry works sometimes and doesn't work other times. Yeah, so you want this kind of, having a rigorous basis just makes things easier to buy, I guess. And then, you can take the aesthetic leaps on top of that. As I said, there's some things that you don't want to completely ignore, like combustion and basic chemistry and stuff. And then if you ignore those and don't ignore the knock-on effects of that, there's a problem. But, I mean, like, you can have magic, and you don't need to necessarily justify how magic works on a rigorous scientific basis, but it should be internally consistent, and that's the kind of rigor I prefer to see.
Right, yeah, so if you include magic, it needs to have its own set of consequences they need to be dealt with.
Yeah, and they don't need to always be made explicit to the audience. It's better if you do yourself have some kind of understanding of its limitations, rather than just using it as a get out of writer's block card.
Are you advocating that writers should hide their work when it comes to writing fiction, Bill, eh?
No.
No, really? Oh, it sounded very much like that to me.
I said necessarily, Edgar. They should necessarily show it.
That's okay. Good.
Like, is it Sanderson's law?
Sanderson's 3 laws of magic, isn't it?
I only know one of them.
Oh, I think there's 3 of them, as far as I know.
Let's Google it.
Let's Google it.
The one I'm thinking of anyway is a writer shouldn't use magic in a previously unseen way to solve problems.
Yeah,
they can use magic to create problems all the day. But if you just say, "Oh, and then they solve this thing because of some new magic you haven't heard of before," that's a cop out.
Yeah, no, but that's like Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. But it's kind of a specific implementation of it.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. It's like the Da Vinci Code. Mm-hmm. It's a great example of that. Of just stuff pops up to solve problems all the time. Like
that's solved now.
Yeah, and every time they hit a roadblock, it's like, and I remember reading it when I was younger and going, I don't care anymore because I know whatever problem they have down the road, they're just going to solve it immediately and without any sort of like backing to it. Like, it drove me nuts. It was one of the first books I actually really hated. Did not like that book. Now, on the subject, have you got the 3 laws up there?
I can only find one of them.
Oh. I always thought there was a set of 3. Huh.
Well, here's Brandison's 3rd law. Okay, so I guess there is.
That implies there's at least 3.
Okay, so that was the first law. I'll read out how he's phrased it.
Go for it.
So, an author's ability to solve conflict with magic is directly proportional to how well the reader understands said magic.
Oh, it's beautifully phrased, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah, that's really, and it's very kind of intuitive, and it makes a lot of sense. Okay, the second law, I haven't come across this before.
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
Limitations are greater than powers.
Limitations are greater than powers. Oh, yeah, totally.
So what he's saying here is, when people describe a magic system, they usually talk about what it can do. So Superman, what is Superman's powers? He can fly, super strength, lasers, etc. But he's suggesting that actually what makes magic interesting is what it can't do.
Yeah.
And what its limitations are. And I really like this, because this is the kind of thing I'm always saying about composing.
Okay.
You know, I was always saying this. Things are more defined by the limitations you put on them.
Yeah.
Than saying, oh, well, if you just like sit down with a blank sheet and can do whatever, then you'll never get anything done. But if you say, oh, well, I want to use this kind of material, it's a lot easier.
That's, like, maybe it's because we come from, like, an artistic background. But that, like, that second one there, that strikes me as, like, really obvious. Like, I never embark on any sort of creative endeavor without first putting, like, strict limitations on what it is I'm about to do. Like, if I do a painting, I'll be like, you know what, for this painting, I'll only use shades of blue. Or something like that. You know, like, it would be, like, crazy for me to embark on a creative project and just go, I'll just do whatever. You know? And maybe it's because we come from an artistic background. I don't know. But that one strikes me as obvious.
It doesn't strike me as quite as obvious.
Okay.
But that's interesting, though.
All right, third one.
And the third one is expand what you already have before you add something new. So
Okay. Right. Again, right? It strikes me. It's all very good. Brandon Sanderson, well done. Great laws, right? But like that again seems really obvious. Like fully explore the things you've created before you decide to do something else. You know?
I know, man. I think this is definitely necessary. If you look at a lot of kind of amateur world builders, they just like throw stuff in and don't develop it. They like throw in as much as possible and don't actually explore individual elements.
Yeah, see, this is the thing. This is this bias that people have where they think that the way they do things is the way everyone does things, you know?
Yeah.
And again, I think it's maybe because of an artistic background on my part that like these things are just intuitive in a way. Mm-hmm. If you look at the videos, right? I've spent nearly 2 years, right? And I've barely gotten to the point where a person watching my videos can make their own Wikipedia page. I am one for sticking on something before going, you know? But yeah, okay, good laws. I like them. And that first one is eloquently phrased.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so
really good.
So good. On the magic thing, we weren't going to talk about this at all, but it looks like, you know what it looks like, Bill? It looks like this could be a follow-up episode. Let's end the season with a follow-up episode. Let's end with your good stuff. No, but the magic thing, right? Do you have any examples of really bad magic world building? Because I'm more of a sci-fi guy than I am a fantasy guy, so I don't think I even know how one would really have awful magic. Oh no, wait, Harry Potter. That's not great magic, as far as I know.
I have issues with Harry Potter. The magic has never really bothered me that much. I've other world building issues with it, which I'm sure I've talked about before.
You actually haven't. And,
have I not?
And can we pin that, right? And
sure.
And come back to it, because you know we all know Edgar loves to mock and ridicule jovially various works of fiction. Anyhow, so that's the pin on Harry Potter. The magic, yeah. So bad examples. Is there anything you can think of off the top of your head?
See, I'm very, very picky with how with the fantasy that I read, and I also really liking things. So
really?
I'm not naturally inclined towards criticism.
You're ever the optimist when it comes to these things. I did not know that.
Yeah, I like liking things.
Would you rather bang on about how much you like something or how much or complain about something? Like, I'm a sort of person that like I love complaining about a thing I didn't like. I would never like sit around and talk about how great something was, because it's like, yeah, it's great.
It's rare enough that I'll really get a strong negative reaction towards things. So it's more of a novelty for me to complain about something, definitely.
Mind blown. And I lived with you and I did not realise that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, name some things that I really don't like. I mean, there's some things that I think are kind of dumb or boring or whatever. But like, there's very few things I really strongly dislike.
Yeah, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Seal.
Edgar, I love Seal.
For the listeners, I cannot stand Seal's music, right? And Bill loves it, and I thought this was a joke for the longest time. I thought it was a joke. I couldn't fathom how someone could like Seal's music, but apparently Bill does.
Kiss from a Rose is an amazing song.
Kiss from a Rose is just it's just awful.
So good.
It really is. I can't. Like, I'm willing to give a lot of music a go. Like we discussed this in real life last night. We shared a lot of music together. I'm willing to give music a go. I gave Kiss from a Rose a go, and just no, I can't. But anyhow, magic.
One of the, can I just bang on that for a little moment?
For Seal.
From the negativity.
Oh yeah, keep going. Yeah, definitely.
Like, you know what my least favorite film is?
Come
on, Edgar.
Oh, is it obvious?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like, I really hate this film.
You really hate this film? Have I watched it with you?
No. I only saw it once, and I have no intention of ever seeing it again because I hated it.
I have no idea.
Prometheus.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I hate Prometheus. I hate everything about it, pretty much. There's, like, the first few minutes are okay, and Fassbender's acting is grand, and I every other thing that happened made me angrier and angrier.
Bill, remember the axe? The axe was great crack.
Oh my god, don't get me started. This is going to turn into an episode where I just list every single thing I hated about that film.
Or do you remember the thing where they have, like, intimate knowledge of alien anatomy when the thing gets pregnant? And they know already how long it's going to take before the alien is going to be birthed, because you obviously know these things.
Edgar, please.
Well, hold on, Mr. Positivity. Put your positive spin on this. Is there anything good about Prometheus? Anything that's worth saving?
It's visually impressive.
It's visually impressive. Okay.
Yeah, it's quite visually impressive. Like, you know, it's a striking film, and Fassbender is quite good in it.
But that's it.
That is it. Right? Okay, the point what I'm getting at here is yeah. I'm really glad that I saw that film, because if I had just gone and seen, like, any other films that were in the cinema that day, and they either would have been good,
okay,
or they would have been, like, kind of rubbish and whatever, I would not have had a strong reaction.
Yes.
So, like, while I am generally kind of more for positivity, and like I said, I like liking things, I like enjoying stuff, I try and see the good in the media I consume. It was just such a fresh experience to loathe the film as much as I absolutely despised Prometheus.
Huh. That's interesting. Can I ask you a question?
You can.
Have you ever come across any cases of bad magic building?
Okay, well, as I said, none really come to mind, because I've never been aware of anyone just kind of throwing stuff together. I've never kind of been conscious that the author was just throwing stuff together, not really. I suppose they do kind of do that a bit in Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they do. She does do that a bit in Harry Potter.
Yeah.
They don't really explain things much in sort of older fantasy stuff like Narnia and Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
That's a very different kind of thing. They're like, Lord of the Rings is mythical.
Yeah, so exactly. So I because of that, I never, when reading or watching the films and the books, I never thought this makes no sense. It was always just like, this is part of the world.
Yeah,
it
and
works.
Like, Gandalf is an angel. He's literally an angel. Is he not like a semi-angel? Yeah,
he's not full on angelic. Like, he's not up there in the pantheon. He's like a demigod, isn't he?
I would say an angel ranks below a demigod.
Okay, all right. I must watch CGP Grey's video again on the mythology of Lord of the Rings. Huh. There you go.
But yeah, he's like a Valar or a Maiar or one of those things. Like, he is a celestial being. So, you know, it makes sense internally for the audience not to really have a clear grasp on exactly what he's doing.
Yeah, and Deus Ex Machina in his case is perfectly legit.
I guess.
Literally the hand of God. So, flip it again. Any cases of extremely good magic building?
Well, Brandon Sanderson. I'd say Mistborn is very, very well done. Okay. Both in terms of how the system actually works and how the characters understand the system, and how it's revealed to the audience.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you've any good and bad magic building, leave it in comments. I want to be informed about this because I really don't know. So that'd
Same,
be really cool.
yeah.
It'd be really cool.
What I'd also recommend is the have I talked about Scott Lynch before?
No.
He wrote a novel called The Lies of Lochlamara.
Oh jeez, no, never heard of that.
It's the first in I think there's going to be 10 novels in the Gentleman Bastard sequence.
Oh jeez. Okay.
The first novel is absolutely fantastic. The way I sell it to people when I'm trying to get them to read it is it's Ocean's 11 set in a fantasy Renaissance Venice.
Oh, that sounds cool.
It's absolutely brilliant. It's an extended heist, essentially. It's kind of a crime heist story in this sort of like fantastic pseudo-Italian background.
Wow, that's really cool.
The characters in it themselves don't have access to magic. They're just thieves. They're just kind of like scoundrels and rogues.
Okay.
And in their encounters with magic, when they come in conflict with it, they have to fight it with like trickery and thievery and like sleight of hand and stuff. So it's brilliant because and in that universe, magic, the way they've set it up politically is extremely kind of powerful and extremely kind of monolithically powerful.
Okay.
So there's a whole element to it that they're like really sticking it to the man by doing this.
Cool. That sounds genuinely very unique.
It's an absolutely great book. The sequel is also really good. The third one is pretty good. I wasn't as sold on the third one, but I think the fourth one is out soon.
And there's another 7 to go.
Yeah.
Good.
Apparently.
Man, the fantasy authors, they like their books.
They certainly do.
Lots of the books.
Certainly do.
I feel really validated by that.
By what?
For the past number of years, an idea has been knocking. I've 2 ideas in my head about creative projects I'd like to do, right? Mm-hmm. One, which is not related to what you just said, but I'll put it out there anyways, is I would like to do I don't know how to say it, it's like a short film, okay, that centers around how to take down the internet, okay?
Oh, yeah.
But the cast are going to be like teenagers.
Okay.
That's project number 1. Project number 2 that I've like literally been cooking for years is I would have loved to set a noir gangster story set in the solar system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool that it springs up that you said there about like a heist in a fantasy setting. And I was like, oh, I was going to like do a gangster story in a solar system setting. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. That's, made me think of it. But anyhow.
I mean, Cowboy Bebop is in a lot of ways a gangster movie.
In my head, it is nothing like Cowboy Bebop. It would be kind of done like a 30s noir film.
Okay.
Except that they're able to fly to different planets. So as opposed to going to another city, you'd go to a different planet.
They definitely play with that a little bit in Cowboy Bebop, though.
Oh. Again, I haven't watched all of Cowboy Bebop. I've watched a couple of episodes.
Oh, okay.
It's good stuff.
It is, yeah. It's
very good stuff.
One of the animes I like.
One of them. The one anime I like. Have you ever seen Death Note? Have I talked about this before?
I don't think so, no. I started it.
Okay, I'm on about the film.
Oh no, never saw it.
Okay, worth watching. If you got about 4 hours to spare, you should watch it. It's very long.
Could not get any interest in the anime.
Really?
No, just bored me to tears.
Is it now Studio Ghibli?
Mm-hmm.
I think what I'm about to talk about is Studio Ghibli. If not, I'm sorry, internet. But I've seen very many like anime films, like anime manga type things, that all center around the idea of there being little to no plot. Just nothing happens.
Okay.
And they're oftentimes like a coming of age sort of story, and you expect there to be like conflict and plot and resolution of conflict, but like there's nothing. And I really like watching those because you sit there and you're kind of like, I've just had 2 hours of chill. I've watched really nice graphics and there's a kind of a nice meaning behind what I've watched, but I haven't experienced the story, which is really, really weird, and I really enjoy it.
The only Studio Ghibli I've seen is Spirited Away, which definitely has conflict and.
Yeah, no, that does. I'm on the fence about Spirited Away.
Really?
I'm not as everyone's like, this is the greatest thing ever made. I'm not quite there with that.
Okay.
I think the anime I do watch or have come in contact to, should I say, is a little bit more subdued, and that's the sort of thing I go for. You know?
The other thing that comes to mind is, have you ever seen Adaptations?
Of Adaptations of what?
There's a film called Adaptations. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah, no, I haven't.
You haven't?
I have not, no.
Okay. It's by, what's the guy's name? Give me a second. Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah, no idea.
Who also wrote Being John Malkovich.
Oh, okay, alright, okay.
And it's about... The film is about Charlie Kaufman trying to write a screenplay where nothing much happens. He tries to do a film adaptation of a book called The Orchid Thief.
Okay.
Which is just a book about orchids, as far as I know.
Right.
And Charlie Kaufman really likes this book, and he wants to write... So he writes this film about himself trying to write about the screenplay version of this book.
Oh, meta.
While his brother is... whose name I can't remember, something else Kaufman, Donald Kaufman,
alright,
also decides to become a screenplay, change career and become a screenplay writer, and their kind of conflict. And both of these people are played by Nicolas Cage, and Charlie Kaufman is a real person, but his twin brother isn't.
Alright, okay.
And it becomes partially an adaptation of The Orchid Thief that he's trying to write within the film, and it becomes partially about him trying to write the film, and then it becomes partially a fictionalized version of both of those accounts mixed together, and it is crazy.
That is the most majestic thing I've heard all day.
And that it's a great film.
What's it? I need to take this down. What's it called?
Adaptations.
Adaptations. Cool. I'll check it out. A point, right?
Mm-hmm.
That brings up there, and this is a follow-up point and feedback from the Reddit. I mentioned last time on the last podcast about advancing the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, if it doesn't advance the plot, then there's no point having that scene or that paragraph or that chapter in your work, right?
Yeah.
I need to clarify this, okay? Because I feel like I came across as some sort of Philistine here, okay? It's not just the plot, right? Like, one doesn't... You said that's nonsense, and I agree with you. It is nonsense, right? You don't need to advance the plot. One just needs to advance something. Like, one can advance the symbolism. One could advance whatever. But if it's literally there for the sake of it being there because you as a writer think, this would be a good idea, then I think it's nonsense. Like you said about... what was the example you gave in The Godfather?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I haven't seen The Godfather, right? But if that scene, you said where he's playing with his grandchildren or whatever?
Yeah.
If that scene doesn't advance him as a character or advances the symbolism or advances something, then it's useless and then it needs to be cut. That was what I was getting at in the last podcast, but I didn't enunciate clearly because Jesus, it's so hard to do this when trying to edit your thoughts live is just it's so hard.
Trying to go off the dome.
Trying to go off the dome?
Trying to improvise all your thoughts.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult. It's so much harder than the videos. The videos are great. You can take 2-3 weeks to just get everything down straight. But it's really difficult. Anyway,
I think having a scene or having a chapter that's purely aesthetic in function is still advancing something if that's kind of if you structure it well and if that kind of fits in with the rest of the work.
Yeah, I think the key there in what you said is that there's a lot of ifs.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm just trying to avoid making kind of blanket statements about these kind of things.
You really hate the blanket statements.
Of course I do.
I noticed this as well in editing the last one, where you're kind of like, that's a sweeping statement, Edgar. I get, right, that if you make a blanket statement, it needs to cover every eventuality, and that's impossible. Okay, and I get that there's a flaw in using them, but there's a subtext to when people in casual conversation use them, in that they are making a statement about how they feel about a thing in general, and they're not meaning it to apply to every eventuality.
I guess I just like to be kind of clear that I'm not talking about
Like
every
if I were
eventuality.
to write a script, right? I wouldn't make blanket statements. I'd use lots of words like, like say most languages use X,
Okay.
Sometimes we see this, right? But because it's recording and we're live, like we're live-ish, I have no time to edit these things. So sometimes a blanket statement comes up. It doesn't invalidate my argument, I think, given the nature of how we are arguing.
For me, I feel like it would when I make them.
Really?
Yeah.
You see, if you were to make them, I just accept the meaning behind them, if you know what I mean. Like if you went, all organisms are alive, right? Or something like that. That's probably not the best analogy in the world. And, I could put up my hand and be like, viruses, man. They're not really alive.
Are they organisms?
I don't even know. That's why I said it's not even. But if you make a squeaky thing like that, I'm not going to go, oh, well, there's this one case where it breaks down. Therefore, what you just said is nonsense. I'll go, oh, no, I get where he's coming at there. He's making a point that the majority of things are. And if he was given 10 minutes to review his statement, he would come up with adequate wording. Do you know what I mean?
I guess.
Okay. Sorry, I was a little bit when editing. I was like, oh god. I was partly frustrated with myself because I was like, make sure when talking to Bill you get things right. And then I was partly frustrated at you. I was like, no, stop calling me out on the bits where I'm just a little bit off point. But it's all good. It's all fun and games. All right, now. We have covered 3 points out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 points on our list. Bill, today we are doing very well. Okay, we're going to need to skip a couple of things here.
Will we come back to the Harry Potter point?
Do you want to talk about the Harry Potter point?
If you like. I thought I'd said this before, but if not, I'll
Let's go for it. Let's go for it.
Okay. So I mentioned Harry Potter before, and that I have certain issues with Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. Overall, I think it has a lot to offer. I like liking things. There's I was a huge fan of it when it was being released. I got the first book a little while after it came out. A friend gave it to me, and I was hooked. And I got the subsequent ones on release.
Okay.
But in hindsight, there are a couple of issues with it from a kind of a writing point of view and from a world building point of view. And the way I like to demonstrate this to people is asking them, who guards the wizard jail?
Oh, yes. The Dementors thing. Yeah.
Yes, right?
Right.
They're only called the Dementors from book 3 onwards.
Yeah, and before that, they were just called the Guard, isn't it? Like
They're called the Azkaban Guards.
Yeah.
And you know nothing about them. And that really annoyed me even at the time.
Because you're dropping in just a new thing inexplicably.
Yeah. So like, if these the Azkaban Guards, why is everyone only referring to them as the Dementors from this point on? Like, did they
change of guard?
God. Like, did they get like an official name change in 1993, and then everyone was like had to use it, but beforehand it was fine?
That's not necessarily a world building criticism. That's just the writing criticism, isn't it? That's just dodgy writing on your part.
But how the world has been portrayed it's a huge inconsistency in how the world is portrayed.
Yeah, no, I guess, yeah.
And then stuff like, I mean, all of these will overlap a little bit with writing criticisms. The Triwizard tournament in book 4.
Yes. Now, what's wrong with that?
Like, no one ever mentioned it to Harry ever, like in his 3 years in Hogwarts. No one was like, oh yeah, we have this, a couple of years ago, this French school and this like creepy Eastern European school came over, and we had this like big sports thing. It was pretty cool. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't have to turn up in the dialogue necessarily, but like, no one tells Harry anything that happens ever unless it like directly involves him. Like, no one has ever mentioned anything that's happened in the past in the school.
That's a fair point.
And like the whole last book is she just pulled that out of thin air. It's like, oh, and there's these 3 plot critical items which no one's ever heard of before. I've never mentioned them, but you actually need them to resolve the entire series. So you better go find the Deathly Hallows.
Are they? Oh, right. Okay. Are they? What are the 3 items? I'm not that emotionally attached to Harry Potter, so I mean, like.
Oh, it's like the Elder Wand, the Invisibility Cloak, and the Resurrection Stone, I think.
They have an invisibility cloak.
Yeah, but the concept of the Deathly Hallows was never mentioned until the 7th book.
All right. Does the invisibility cloak take on some sort of new meaning?
Yeah, it becomes. I think it's one of the Deathly Hallows. I'll just Google this to make sure. It becomes like critical to resolving the final conflict.
Yeah, no, I heard that complaint before.
And I think even the Horcruxes aren't mentioned until like way into book 6.
That's why I was asking.
You've seen them. You've seen the Horcruxes. You've seen several of them earlier, but the fact of Horcruxes isn't mentioned till quite late in the game. And I'd need to reread it to kind of see how it's handled. But I suspect that it's a similar kind of thing. It's just kind of we need to do this.
Yeah, the internet, as far as I'm aware, has similar issues with the Horcruxes as you do. So I think you're right there. I have other problems with it. They are all problems, right? But one of my problems is the Marauders map.
Yeah.
That's world breaking. You know, that the bit of technology is just it's game changing in terms of the world, right? But even aside from that, the Weasley twins had the map for many years before it was given to Harry or Ron or whoever has it, yeah?
Yeah.
And Ron had Peter Pettigrew in his pocket for many years.
Yeah.
So, this is not, just listeners, this isn't any sort of new information. This is stuff I've read and subsequently have become horrified at it. So it's not like I'm pioneering this sort of line of criticism. This is not my own opinions, just to say. But so, anyway, they should have seen Peter Pettigrew and Ron shacking up in the same room every night for many years and just didn't care. Just if you are to introduce the concept of a map, right, that has people's names on it, just think about all the people. That when I found that out, and I didn't stumble across this myself. When I found that out, I was like, that's not great. That's not good at all.
Does it definitely show the names of people who are animagist?
But nothing is said to the contrary.
Yeah.
We're told that it shows the name of people, so we can only assume that it shows the name of people who were people.
Yeah, and I guess this might be an example of kind of using your magic to kind of cover up. It's not exactly Sanderson's first law because it's not solving problems as such.
No, it's not. It's not quite. But I get your point.
It's in the same kind of area.
But it's almost like she introduced this new power, this new magic, and just didn't explore like the ramifications of it or the limitations of it. So I've problems with that. I have problems with the banking system.
Oh, sorry, I'm just looking on the Harry Potter Wikia.
Oh.
The Marauders map is not fooled by animagi, polyjuice potions, or invisibility cloaks.
There, you see. And what makes it even worse, if that's stated, if that was written in J.K. Rowling's words in the book, that it's not fooled by this class of people or these things, that makes it even worse, you know? But anyway, banking system. I have a problem with the banking system in Harry Potter.
How's that?
So, from what we know, and we can only go on what's given in the text, right? There is one bank. Yeah?
Yeah, Gringotts.
And all the wizarding community seems to use this one bank. Right? So the net assets of the wizarding world are stored physically in one location. Right?
Well, no, because people will have their own assets that they aren't currently banking and stuff. And like it's a kind of a pseudo-feudal system, so they'll have their own holdings and their own castles and things as well.
Okay, would it be a safe thing to say that the most valuable assets of the wizarding world are stored in one location? I don't think that it's a leap to say that.
I don't know, but I guess your point will still be valid. Like, there's a significant amount of capital concentrated in Gringotts.
Concentrated in Gringotts. Now, that's a security issue, alright? Like, diversify your bonds in a sort of way, you know? Diversify your locations where you store stuff, right? That's the first issue. Second issue is, the bank is run by goblins, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in the narrative, they are said to, like, hate humans. Like, despise them, right? So you put all your wealth, or a significant portion of your wealth, in the hands of, like, a race that despises you. What part of that makes sense?
I think goblins are also kind of somewhat subjugated by humans.
Yeah, like there's the whole the way it's set up. What the goblins should be doing is taking all the cash and just legging it. Like it's the only plausible thing there. It's just really, really annoying. Like,
well, like if they've like been the victim, like the losing side of some kind of like race war with the wizarding community, then they probably can't do that. You know, they.
Okay, but there you go. The losing side of a race war. These are not good things. Like the banking system it could be, if you swing it the right way, it could be like you said about like race war and like quasi slavery perhaps, and you can bring all this in, and then on top of that, it just financially makes no sense, and it's a security threat. It just drives me nuts. The equivalent, right, Bill? If I were to go and take my net savings that I have, right, and give them to someone who, like a next door neighbor, say, who despises me, and was like, you, take my money, and when I need it, I'll come back for it. That's great, thanks. It makes no sense. I'm sorry. Oh,
I don't know. It's whatever the balance of like economic power is after the kind of the Goblin War. You know, it could be just one of those weird historical situations.
Fair enough, yeah. But then, like, that added in with every other world building problem, you're kind of like, I don't know if this was intended as a minor quirk. You know?
Yeah.
There's so much more. The love potion.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get into it because it's pretty grim, but the love potion has serious moral implications.
Oh yeah, I mean that's wicked creepy.
Yeah. That as far as I can remember. Now again, I read these books when they came out, but as far as I remember, like, this wasn't like tempered in any way or explored further. It's just this thing was dropped in, and you were left with the feeling of, oh right, well that's really weird. You know, like, just
yeah.
If you drop in an element, explore it. I've no problem with grim and dark elements in something, but you need to fully explore the ramifications. Otherwise, don't drop the thing in. It's advancing the plot, Bill, all over again.
Calm down, Edgar. Breathe.
Exhale that beautiful chlorine. Now, what's it called? So anyhow, Harry Potter, problematic. I think it's really, overall though, if we were going to, like, if we want to like things, if we want to liking things, it has a lot of plus points.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're being, or at least I'm being, particularly harsh, because I like being harsh about things. But yeah, Harry Potter's fine. It's all gravy. And the films, I like the films. I think the films are quite well done. They're visually quite impressive, and they've maintained a sort of level of impressiveness the entire way through.
Mm-hmm.
And any problems with them can be stemmed back from the writing. Also, J.K. Rowling as a writer, as far as I remember, she had a wicked penchant for just throwing everything at you in terms of like vocabulary. I seem to remember. I seem to remember as well, like, how she went about saying, like, he said, you know, like, blah 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 blah. He said, blah 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 blah. She replied. There seemed to have been an awful lot of words used for said.
And are you posing that as a positive or a negative?
No, a negative. Like, way too many. Like, as in she went for kind of overindulgence over functionality.
Like 12-year-old essay kind of stuff.
I wouldn't say J.K. Rowling is of the same level as a 12-year-old essay.
No, but yeah, that kind of thing where you just use all the words into the thesaurus because that's what your English teacher said.
Oh God, I hope no English teacher actually says that.
Yeah.
Did your English teacher say it?
When I was a bit younger, yeah, I was like, you know, don't just say he went, say he strolled or he sauntered or.
He sauntered. I love that. A sort of elementary school level story. The man sauntered down the road. That's brilliant. Actually, as a question, and again, not related to anything at all. Well, moderately. I always struggled. I'm not a good writer. I always struggled in school writing stories. Mm-hmm. I was fine with coming up with the story, not good at portraying the story. And one of the biggest problems I had was dialogue. And I was never taught to me, and I never understood what's the rules regarding putting in, like, stuff like he said, she said, they replied. Like I realize that it doesn't come after every line. It's not like Bill said, stop talking about this, Bill said. Why do we need to go on about? He continued. Like, when does one not do those things? I don't understand it.
I don't know of any kind of strict guideline, to be honest.
Is it a feeling thing that just writers develop the feel for how to make it flow better?
I reckon so, yeah.
I reckon so. That always bugged me. I always felt any sort of dialogue I had was just stale and unimaginative. So I guess I'll never write my noir in space. Okay, so we had a comment in the Reddit, which I believe came from our resident space cartographer once again, Dominic.
Very good.
And it was a comment about maths.
Okay.
We had a relatively mathsy episode last week, and he left a comment about postfix and prefix notation.
Oh, because we were talking about order of operations, weren't we?
We were talking about order of operations. Now, do you know what postfix and prefix notation is?
I don't.
All right, so for the listeners and for Bill, the regular way we do maths is we use infix notation. That is, we have an operand, which is like a constant or a number or a variable, then an operator, and then another operand. So like 2 plus 3.
Okay.
All right, the operator is infixed, fixed in between the two operands. And so postfix is that the operator is just after the two operands. So you'd have...
Okay, so 5-4 plus.
5-4 plus, exactly. And then prefix is that it's just beforehand. So you have plus 5-4. Mm-hmm. All right? And it the reason why this exists is because it makes life easier for computer scientists, as far as I know. Because you don't need things like parentheses, and it saves space when programming and coding. So it works very well for computer programmers. It's not very intuitive for actual humans. But I was thinking about this. I was like, maybe this would be a cool thing to explore when world building a culture. That a culture has developed like post or prefix notation as opposed to infix. I thought that'd be a really interesting thing to try and do. Thoughts?
Okay. Yeah, sure. That is quite interesting. I mean, because there are a number of examples of very different numerical systems in the real world. So this, I guess, is just looking at it a little bit further. I don't really know much about actual ways of thinking about maths in other cultures.
Well, this ties into the next point I was going to make, actually, about if I was to like run with this post or prefix notation as the way my culture uses maths, I'm definitely going to try and couple it with my love of base 12. And then when we speak about how cultures deal with things, like many cultures throughout our the Earth's history have used different bases for counting in. Mm-hmm. So it hit me there when Dominic left the comment. I could do like a postfix base 12 math system for my culture. And the more I thought about that, the more I was like, oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
Your love of base 12?
Yes.
This is new to me.
All right. I don't like the system we have at the moment. I think a lot of people don't like the system we have at the moment. Base 10 it has its advantages, but it's also got some serious drawbacks.
Like what?
Well, like for example, the factors of 10, right, are really limited. They're just 2 and 5.
Okay,
so
right.
we can really easily divide things in 2 and in fifths. Now, 2, like halves are very important in real life. Fifths, not so much. And when you look at base 12, because all numbers then go up to 12, and then you start looping and repeating, you can divide things in halves, thirds, quarters, sixths. There's a lot more. And 12 is particularly unique because it's one of the lowest number with 4 factors.
Right.
Okay, so that would, if a culture were to develop a base 12 system, like if they say they had like 6 fingers on each hand, it would be much easier for them to do fractional stuff on the fly.
Well, for those fractions.
Well, for those fractions, but there's more of them, you see.
Yeah.
Like a third of 10 is a pretty tricky concept to think about. Like obviously we know it's, 0.33333. Or, sorry, a third of 1 is 0.33333. But that's a recurring thing, and a third is a fairly common fraction, Like it's not inconceivable that someone, way back in the early days would have wanted to sell a third of his flock of sheep. But trying to do that is really hard if you have 10 sheep, you know? You see what I mean? So it's harder to think in fractions.
If you have 10 sheep in base 12, it's just as hard to sell.
Yeah, I realize it's a flawed thing. But the point is, there are more factors for 12. And 12 is a low enough number to grasp that it's a better system than base 10. We're never going to change base 10. It would be too much of like a monumental task to try and undertake. But 12 is better. And it's nicer than, say, 24, because like base 24 has, you know, more factors again, but 24 gets a bit unwieldy.
Yeah, it's a bit big.
Yeah, and then like, I don't know how the Mayans did it with their base 60, but they did it. But the idea
I think it was 610s. It wasn't straight. It wasn't like a straight run to 60.
Oh, wasn't that a straight run 60?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, well that would make more sense, because having 60 individual symbols and 60 words for those symbols, that's just really cumbersome. 12 is small enough to be understandable and has enough factors to make it an extremely useful base.
Hold on, I think it might have been 320s actually.
Oh, that's much less impressive. Although 20 is you can divide, easily divide things in halves, tens, quarters. Yeah, the halves and the quarters is useful. Mm-hmm. But still, base 12. And there's like societies around the world, like the Dozenal Society of North America, I think it's called, that advocate for changing the base 12. Now, clearly that's ludicrous. It's not going to happen. But if you're world building a fictional culture, base 12 is quite easy to implement. So anyhow, regardless, Dominic made me think about this, and I might actually look deeper into postfix notation in base 12 for my culture. Just thought I'd put it out there,
Cool. Yeah.
All right. Any thoughts?
Nothing comes to mind.
That's
no,
good.
it's a straight up interesting idea, and I'd like to see what people could do with it.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting. If anyone else wants to leave any maths world building in the subreddit, I like the maths. So go for it. All right, okay, so there was that. Now, I think the final thing we'll talk about today is the season finale.
Sure, yeah. So explain this to me. So I'm not fully aware of this concept.
So this is the last episode of the season.
Okay.
Right?
Why is it a season?
Okay, so it's nice to group things into like groups. You know what I mean? So one can make changes per season.
Yeah.
It just works nice in my mind. And with the base 10 system we have, it makes sense that this would be the last episode of the season.
Does it?
Yeah. The way it works is if you take the leading digit of the episode number, that gives you whatever season you're on. So episode 12, for example, will be a season 1 episode. Episode 24 will be a season 2 episode.
And we're using computer science numbering here, like with the episodes, that the first season is season 0.
The first season is season 0. By rights, I should have, when I did this, made every episode like 01, 02, 03. I did not do that. I am a fallible human. So for the most part, you're able to spot what season you're on by the episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. Seems kind of... I don't know. So what, kind of?
Yeah, I mean, like it's
kind of arbitrary or something.
It's a non-event. Like, it's not like anything's going to change. We're going to have a regular podcast out next month at the same time. Yeah,
so it's not really a season then, is it? Because it's like independent of actual relation to the year or whatever.
Oh yeah, it's totally independent of relation to the year. Yeah.
Okay.
Like a season on the Artifexian podcast is going to be 10 episodes, and that's just the way it is.
Here's a world building challenge.
Here's how we go for it.
Let's come up with a setting where we use the podcast and the videos as kind of generative material for the figures. So a season is 10 months long.
What are you talking about?
What?
I don't follow at all what you're saying.
So we have a setting, and the seasons are 10 months long.
Oh, because the podcast has been running for 10 months.
Yeah, and then what's your average video upload period? Then that could be some other kind of period with it on the planet.
But what happens then, Bill, if we decide to do a burst of episodes and put out like 3 in a month? The seasons change then. Oh, I wonder what that sounds like. Game of Thrones, anyone? It
could be a chaotic system. There's lots of ways to think about it. Or we could just draw a line under some point and say we're using the average figures up until here.
Oh, that's a good point. Here you go. World building challenge, people. What are the ramifications of a 10-month season?
Really big flowers.
I'm sure it is. So the whole point of the season thing is that if we need to make changes or we want to make changes, we can do so per season.
Okay.
Okay, so
there's a watershed moment
yes.
which to do so.
Exactly, yeah. And so this is one of those watershed moments. So I thought I'd run by you and the listeners some ideas I've had for next season.
Please do.
And that we can incorporate to make the podcast more fun and more enjoyable for people. Yeah?
Yeah.
So the first thing I thought of was having a flag corner.
Okay.
All right? So reasons for this.
Flags are great.
Flags are great, right? And I know a lot of people who listen to our podcast also listen to Hello Internet, or so iTunes tells me. Hello Internet is a big fan of their corners. They have a lot of corners. Some might say too many corners, but I think it's just right. One can never have too many corners. And they also discuss flags. But what they don't have is a flag corner. And me personally, I wish they doubled down on the flags and discussed more about flags. But I don't think that's going to happen. So I feel like we can exploit this a little bit. You know, because we are obviously a podcast on par with Hello Internet. Like,
I would say easily.
Let's be fair, and perhaps even better, you know? But, so I thought it might be a neat idea if there's some sort of, something in the news, for example, we discuss the flag pertaining to that. Like, for example, at the moment, there's a new Prime Minister in Canada, I think. Mm-hmm. And he seems to be taking the world by storm.
Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, I know nothing about this fella, but like that's in the news, so we could, like, for example, spend a few minutes discussing the Canadian flag.
Yeah.
You know, and talk about our feelings towards it. Is it a good flag? Is it a bad flag? Maybe some interesting facts about it, and that might be able to help people help inform people like doing their own flag creation.
I would be on board with that.
I like the sound of it. I like to see what the subreddit says if they enjoy that idea. I think it'd be really cool. We could also do a flag guessing game. I kind of want to do this because my knowledge of flags, I think, is fairly substantial. So I kind of would like you to be like, can you tell me what the flag of Somalia is? And then I'd be like, oh, it's this thing or whatever. And I'd like to... Yes.
Blue background with a silver star or white star?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So well done, Bill. So it'd be kind of cool to test my knowledge about this.
I'm terrible on African flags. I find quite hard to memorize the African ones.
Africa is fine, right? As long as you ignore just the middle part of Africa. The middle part is horrendous. They're all green, gold, and red.
I see. That's what I thought about the kind of West Africa.
Okay, no. So when I'm saying middle of Africa, I mean like take the equator.
Yeah.
And go a couple of degrees either side of it, and just that whole section, the entire way across the continent.
Oh, okay.
That's
so like between the Sahara and
and sub-Saharan. Well, no, sub-Saharan Africa is everything down there. And and
I used to really get confused by that term. I thought it meant sub-Saharan in climatic terms, like almost as arid as the Sahara, rather than just south of the Sahara. So then people were saying like that. Like Mozambique was sub-Saharan Africa. I was like, well, how is that relevant? It's miles away. And then I figured out they were talking about just the direction.
It's just a geographical thing. But yeah, so a guessing game would be cool. I'd really like a guessing game, and it'll keep me on top with my memorizing the flags, because I think I have most of the flags of the world memorized and most of the state flags memorized as well.
Of the United States.
Of the United States, yeah. And I might crack on and give Australia a shot with their all the same state flags, which is hilarious.
Are they all really similar? Yeah,
they're all ridiculously similar. Like, yeah. So flag corner I think would be cool, but like again, I'd like to hear from people listening if they think it's a goer, because like, you know, we don't want to be harping on about stuff people don't want to listen to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So that's potential segment number 1. Potential segment number 2, a sort of world building FAQ/Q&A.
Okay.
So we had a little bit of this last week where we had an email regarding the plausibility of rings on around an Earth-like planet. I thought it'd be cool, like, if people just want to leave us random world building questions in an email, and then we'd answer some of them in the next episode, you know? Mm-hmm. I think that might be a really interesting way of sparking a bit of conversation. and also addressing people's, issues,
Yeah, that'd be great. And we'd love to hear what our listeners are getting up to and riff off those ideas and build new stuff.
Definitely. I think that would be a really cool idea. Third point, it's not really up for debate in a way. I'm kind of giving you a heads up here.
Okay.
Is that I am going to publish the episodes we've done so far on YouTube.
Okay.
All right. Because again, following the precedent of Halo Internet, which I think is they have a really smart system, and also I've had a lot of comments underneath the videos where I've said, we discussed this point in the podcast, and then people saying, oh, I don't do podcasts, or I have problems listening to your podcast because, if you just listen on the website, it's fairly awkward. You need to do it through iTunes or RSS. So for those people, we could cater for those people by chucking it on YouTube.
Okay.
Right.
Will that be every new episode will go up, or are you going to do it with some delay, or?
Yeah. So what's going to happen is that the episodes on YouTube will be one season behind.
Cool.
All right.
And you'll upload them in bulk.
No, and they'll go up as we put out new ones.
Okay. Cool.
So release date of the first episode of season 1 will be also the release date of the pilot for season 0.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'd be cool. And also, no one likes to talk about money, right? But in the off chance that they somehow do well, I doubt it's going to happen because YouTube is not a podcasting platform, right? But if they happen to get some sort of traction and people like them, particularly recently, you've been doing a lot of good stuff for Edgar, right? Which we're not going to talk about in public, but a lot of good stuff has been happening for Edgar based on Bill's stuff. And Bill is giving up his free time to do these things. So if ever they
Gladly.
Yeah, I know, but you are still giving up your free time. And it's not for an insignificant amount of time. We've been here, for 3 hours?
Coming on that, yeah.
Yeah, coming on 3 hours. So it's not insignificant. And if I can give some money towards that for you, that would be really cool.
Yeah, it would.
And so if we happen to make something off the ad revenue, then I would feel a lot more comfortable, just shipping some cash your way as a thank you. No guarantees, Bill, because I have made an insignificant amount of money in my 2 years on YouTube. So
I'm expecting nothing, Edgar.
Well, that's really good. But I just suppose it's a roundabout way of saying I really appreciate. Look at us getting all nostalgic at the end of the season. Really appreciate.
I've had the time of my life.
If only we could just pirate that and stick it underneath the thing. Oh, it'd be so good. But no, genuine, man. Thanks for being on this journey with me. It's really cool. And if I can give back in some way, I will do my utmost to do so to keep everything on a balanced playing field.
Well, genuinely, Edgar, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, this is all getting very soppy. I'm going to definitely see, can I find some real soppy music to go underneath this? We can play this out. We can play the episode, the end of the season even. We can finish the season with the public domain equivalent of a Seal tune just going in the background as we lament our journey in this past 10 months. But yeah, so that's the shtick. And if anyone has any other thoughts for what they'd like to hear on the podcast, or if they have a suggestion for a segment or anything like that at all, drop us a line, seriously, and we'll see what we can do. Yeah?
Definitely. Listeners, we feed off you. Keep us fed.
We do. We leech off you. We're like blood-sucking vampires.
But no, we really do appreciate all your feedback and everything.
Yeah, no, of course, yeah. And it is super fun talking to people in the Reddit.
Agreed.
I didn't think I'd enjoy chatting so much on YouTube and Reddit, but I really genuinely enjoy hearing people, and especially when people riff off what we've said.
Yeah.
It's great. And I'm just I never had that idea. That is awesome. Wait, let me come back at you with something else. All right, then you go. It's great. Love it. So those are our 3 plans for the first episode of season 1. And yeah, and I guess this brings to conclusion our first season of the Artifexian podcast.
Sure does.
Oh,
it's been emotional, Edgar.
It's very emotional, although nothing has changed. I'm really sorry, listeners. We had a main topic lined up to speak about. We're going to talk about the relevance of using hard science in sci-fi and whether or not pseudoscience is good enough research material for sci-fi works. But I guess we never got to it, Bill.
Strangely and unaccountably, we ended up going on a tangent, which is just unheard of.
I think a tangent is probably understating the concept.
Inconceivable.
Yeah, this never happens. We're always bang on point. In, out, get the job done. Boom.
Yep.
The phrase Netflix and chill. I have been using this phrase wrong.
Oh god, I like where this story is going.